A day after raising everybody's heart rate a little bit with the win, the Guardians got back to a good, old, boring, clean game and win. The train keeps on rolling. The Guardians have won 4 in a row, and that train has a new passenger aboard. That's Johnathan Rodriguez. We'll talk about the addition of Rodriguez to this roster as the Guardians win and Francisco Lindor's return back to Cleveland. Emmanuel Clase is moving up the saves list in the organization, and it's about to be a fun time of year with college tournaments starting up, all on today's Locked On Guardians.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show today. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use code all lowercase LockedOnMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Another win for this team. They keep on rolling. As Everydayer Siege with me, who asked, when are we going to be positive? I feel like we're positive almost every day. There's some guys we think aren't going to keep it up, but there's also some guys who we think are going to play better. This team has a chance to contend all the way to the end as long as health is there, which is the caveat for everybody, team in baseball. Especially
all 30. If the White Sox are healthy, nobody cares.
Yeah. It's one of those situations where, it's like the Yankees going out and getting JT Brubaker for free because the Pirates are cheap, just so they could have more depth. Those little trades like that are still kind of crazy to look at throughout the year. But this team continues to be fun. Even in a game like this where large portions of this game were frustrating, the bottom of the lineup was just giving away at bats and swinging it. They look like if I let my daughter play, well, she wouldn't want to play. If my daughter was interested in MLB The Show, because if I gave her the controller, she'd just swing at everything. That was the bottom of the lineup today. But thankfully, David Fray is making that case for why he needs to be an everydayer David Fray. Maybe not in this podcast, but in life, everydayer. And Rodriguez Rodriguez is a fun guy, a great story. It's taken him a while, but we'll get to him, like a reclassifier, third round pick, I should say. But there's a lot of fun things to discuss, changes with the lineup. And again, that is now between Miles Straw and Ramon Laureano. It's a big chunk of payroll. They've just been like, this isn't working. Goodbye.
Yeah, we could sit there and say how poor the decision was on the front end, which we'll get into in the second segment, really. Going back to Tyler McGill, though, second start off the injured list for him this year. I actually thought he pitched pretty well. I know you said the bottom of the lineup was bad, but the Guardians...
I can't tell with this team how much is them. Is a pitcher pitching well, or a lot of the guys in this lineup not being... Because we saw this with Paddock, right? Sometimes they make a good pitcher look great right now.
My only thing is that he threw 86 pitches in 5 innings. So that tells me that they at least were a little more patient today, because obviously Paddock got to the 7th inning with 70 something.
Yeah, he new career high.
Yeah. So they were really aggressive against Paddock all game, making Tyler McGill throw 86 and getting him after the 5th inning. Granted, he had 13 whiffs in 5 innings, which is a lot for this team that doesn't typically strike out. But he threw a lot of pitches. Maybe that was because of the strikeouts. Maybe, I'm not sure, but at least they made him work. I'll say that is a sign of things against what they did against Paddock, and the same thing they did to Paddock. They jumped him early, and that's kind of what I wonder with this offense. They score if they score early, they feel like they're locked in and they're gonna keep this approach up, and then the pitcher locks in, and then it's like, well, okay, now we're still swinging from the heels, and the pitcher's is pitching better, and this team's still swinging, but now they're coming up empty. Andres Jimenez had 3 strikeouts. Bo Naylor, who we might talk about in the segment, another 3 strikeout game. But yeah, you did enough. Jose had a single in the 1st inning. Josh Naylor singled, and then David Fray. Did Josh Naylor double? No, he singled. David Fray doubled them both in. That was fantastic. Good running on Naylor to get to home on the double. No, it wasn't a double either. I was at the game, and now I forget the sequence of events of how those guys moved up, but they both scored on David Fray's double, so I'll take that. And then how about Kyle Manzardo coming through with a clutch hit in the 7th inning to drive in David Fray, who walked. Again, David Fray had a walk and a hit and 2 RBI, another great game for him. but good to see Manzardo getting it going. I just like this was a clean game overall. They didn't have anything crazy happen, right? Like Ben Lively didn't walk anybody. He pitched a good game. Nick Sandlin did walk someone to load the bases, which kind of got crazy. But then, Barlow threw 10. Cade Smith came in and overpowered the Mets, and then Emmanuel Clase came in and overpowered the Mets. Like, this was just a clean game end to end. They scored early. The pitching was great. They added an insurance run in the fourth inning. Would have liked one more, but they still won by 2. And this Mets lineup, I know the Mets aren't playing good, and they ran themselves out of an inning, which was hilarious. And Mets fans at the game were saying that this is something they do all year. They don't run the bases well. They make goofy mistakes. But Pete Alonso hit the ball hard today. JD Martinez had a single. Nimmo hit the ball okay. The one ball he put in play. The middle of that lineup, I should say the top 4 of that lineup is good. After that, it's pretty ugly. So the Mets are not a good team. So it's a good win, but they didn't do anything crazy to make us pull our hair out, which is good. I appreciate
it. And they got that lead relatively early and then held on. And you had Ben Lively. Like, we're still trying to figure out. So I did. Spencer Morris is a Twitter follower. You and I believe we both follow him, and he does some great stuff. We talked about so it got me going down a bit of a rabbit hole about like what works with Ben Lively, and he was tweeting about how he has big carry, and it is interesting to look at so for those who aren't familiar with this term, it's carry is this idea that makes a pitch look like it's rising when it's not. So it could throw guys off, and he has always had pretty good carry or, visual rise on his fastball. And it's really the only thing that four-seamer has. His other pitches don't really have a lot of great movement or anything that stands out or spin or anything like that. But it seems to be like he gets by with extension and carry. So when you add an elite extension with that carry, it is just keeping hitters off balance. And that's another good start for him. I'm kind of curious. Here's my comment of the day. So obviously Sonny Gray and the 2 pitchers from Japan and why am I blanking?
Eric Fetty
have all pitched very well this year. Is Ben Lively right now the 5th best starting pitcher who was signed in free agency in terms of performance? I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's someone I'm forgetting, so correct me in the comments below, but I would love to hear who else is there. I feel like he's probably done better than Gibson. He's probably done better than whoever else,
Lynn.
That was signed in St. Louis. He's worked out really well. And, it's you go and you look at his baseball savant page, and outside of extension, everything else isn't there, but it's he is staying effective. And to me, the best sign was, again, we faced a team twice in the same week and still Boston, right? And he shut them down both times. And you got Devers just set a Boston record. It's they're a mid team. They're not terrible. They're mid, and he did well. So Lively is to some degree, if I'm going back and doing my 3 stars, Lively is one of them for this. And it just he's interesting to watch. It just because every time you're how? And kudos to them. They drafted him out of high school, couldn't sign him. He bounced around for a bit. When they signed him as their only big free agent signing, he was their biggest free agent signing, right? I guess Hedges, and then
he was out of options. Remember, he's still out of options.
And we were kind of why? And there are people out there oh, I think there's stuff there. And no matter what's happened, he's earned his money this year. Even if it falls apart compared to Laureano and everyone else, he's really earned his money. But he's been fantastic, and I think I want to give him his roses right now. For however long it's going to last. And maybe it just keeps lasting. Maybe again, they're hey, Philadelphia, not necessarily great development. Kansas City, Cincinnati, not teams over. Cincinnati's gotten better pitcher development. But it's they're maybe able to see something they could flip a switch on. And this has been fun.
And it depends on who you're playing, who you're playing at the right time. You were talking about Rafael Devers hitting a home run in 6 straight games. They luckily faced the Red Sox when he was a little banged up and he wasn't playing well. They weren't playing well, and they're still a very mid team. So sometimes it's about who you face and when you face them. But yeah, Lively has done more than you could ask for. I mean, the biggest thing for him is he is limiting the walks. That's a guy who cannot live with putting traffic on the bases, and he's not doing that. And Lord knows this rotation needs more of that because McKenzie can get that way at times, and we've seen Carrasco do it, way too many times this year. And Tanner's walk rate is coming down, and Logan Allen sometimes nibbles a little too much, but overall they're limiting the free passes, and that's what's good for Lively.
That was the big question in our comments is like, who is the guy who leaves with guys pitching well? And it's like, well, we've got
don't ask because you know what's going to happen.
Eventually, it's going to work its way out, or if heaven forfend it doesn't, and like everyone is healthy, then you got a great. It's like you can only be so lucky to have 6 potential starters in baseball right now. Like,
given the way this season is going for everybody, and given the way the season's gone for the Guardians so far, as far as health is concerned, if they really get to mid-June or late June when Gavin comes back, and I don't have any timeline on that. I know there was reports out there.
It's all speculative.
Yeah, nobody knows. I mean, he's not rehabbing right now. It looks like he's probably going to throw another bullpen. I know he was in Cleveland on Monday night with the team, so I'm not sure what the next step for him is. So nobody really knows what the next situation is. But whenever he does come back, if this rotation is still healthy, all 5 of them, and is still pitching this good the way they have in the month of May, God forbid you have a hard choice to make because
and it's not
this rotation has needed it.
It's not the same manager of a year ago. There's always a chance that we've seen votes flexibility, they might go 6-man.
I wouldn't hate that either because you want. I mean, I don't know who from the bullpen goes because you can only carry a certain amount of pitchers if you do that.
I do. I know who goes. Pedro Avila. Thank you for your time.
Yeah. Okay. Well, all right. Yeah, that makes sense. But I wouldn't hate that considering you've got outside of Avila,
there's health issues.
Outside of that, you could give them a rest. All right, we need to talk about David Fry and him getting in the lineup more, which is great.
Josh Rodriguez. We know people want to talk about the J-Rod.
We'll talk about J-Rod. We're going to talk about Clase a little bit. We're going to get into Lindor's return. We're going to get into a bit of news coming about the Guardians spending some money on not players. But we'll tell you why that could be interesting. And before we get out of here today, we definitely want to talk about the college conference tournaments coming up this week. That there's some things that are worth watching in some respects. We'll talk about. So should be a good rest of the show. Please stick around for more. It's not quite buy or sell season for Major League Baseball, but if you are struggling to close deals yourself, B2B selling is tougher than ever. And that's why I want to talk to you about LinkedIn Sales Navigator. It is a sales intelligence platform that helps professionals effectively prospect and engage high-value customers and drive higher revenue and increase sales performance. It helps you target the right buyers, surface key signals such as job changes and accounts you should prioritize, and it shows you hidden allies so you can find those buyers that are more likely to convert. You always want to find those warm leads somehow. Fueled by LinkedIn's 1 billion member platform, Sales Navigator gives you the most up-to-date first-party data. You always want first-party data, most reliable, enabling you to unlock conversations with people that matter. Right now, you can try LinkedIn Sales Navigator and get a 60-day free trial at linkedin.com/locked-on. That is linkedin.com/locked-on for a 60-day free trial. Let LinkedIn Sales Navigator help you sell like a superstar, like Ben Lively today. Just go to linkedin.com/locked-on to get started. Guardians and Mets 2 more times. This Tuesday matchup starts at 6:10. You can hear all the action on your Sirius XM app by just searching Guardians. You could search Mets, but search Guardians because you want the Guardians broadcast because they're winning right now, and that feels good. Speaking of, real quickly, 6:10 starts. I got to tell you, I was at the game on Monday night, and I got home, and it was still light out. I was still home in time to podcast with you, and man, I'm loving those starts. I'm loving the quick games. The pitch clock is great. The early start's great. Clean games that get you out after 2 hours is fantastic. I'm not saying I want less baseball, but because I always want more baseball, but I don't mind the weekday schedule considering you and I both have day jobs.
Yeah, it just throws me off because for me it's 5:40 start times.
It's true. Yeah.
So it's like half the time you text me and I'm like, oh, it's already started. Like it just kind of, you would think I would get used to it by now, but I'm like, oh man. So it's for me, it's like, it's just the timing of it all can throw things off. But yeah, no, it was, hey, as long as they keep winning, I don't care. Start whatever.
Who cares? You can play it. I'd say 3 a.m., but I'm not in college anymore. I can't do 3 a.m. anything anymore, let alone 1 a.m. anything. David Fry, he can do anything, literally. He played left field again. The one gripe I had, there was like a ball, it was like was it the seventh inning, eighth inning, when seventh inning when Barlow came in? Maybe it was a base hit. Maybe it was still when I forget what inning it was. There was a ball that was hit in left field, and I was like, no, because the bullpen didn't give any hits, so it was still lively. So it had to be the sixth. And I was like, maybe Quan gets to that. Maybe a better defender gets to that, but it probably would have been a challenging play anyway. But like that was like such a minuscule thing that I was pointing out. But he worked a walk. He stole a base. He got an RBI hit. The guy doesn't chase out of the zone. His chase rate's fantastic, 91st percentile. Doesn't matter who he's facing on the mound. I still personally lean that if you overexpose him to right-handed pitchers, he'll probably struggle a little more. So, like, I'm not opposed to starting him against some right-handers, but, like, I'd also be careful how crazy you go with that. But then again, right now with Quan out, your options are kind of limited. I know Rodriguez is here, who we're going to talk about in a little bit. I'm tempted to say the whole hitting behind Josh Naylor thing is great. He didn't get a hit when he came up behind Naylor, but he got walked because, lefties don't pitch to David Fry. Why would you? But him hitting behind Naylor and playing left and playing first and catching or DHing, like it's a good little piece for him because you can bring in a lefty if you want to face Josh Naylor. But guess what? If David Fry's sitting behind him and you got the 3-batter minimum, it's probably a mistake. Like every time David Fry comes up, a left-hander probably going to walk him or he's probably going to get a hit. He's got a 1293 OPS against lefties and 13 walks, 9 strikeouts. So if you're a lefty and you bring a lefty in to face Josh Naylor, which, he's gotten better against, but with David Fry behind him, it's a very unique element. I like it.
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement that, like, at this point in time, more Fry. Like, we want Fries with all of it. It's just he keeps performing, and yeah, like we do risk overexposure. I think that's one of those things that none of us are going to disagree on. But I think at this time, when you see it, like our choices are Florial or Gaviari is out there, and it's like the unfortunately the bottom of this roster that at the start of the year we were loving all the flexibility is kind of all as a group decided to implode at once. So I am okay with running him out there because even if he is close to league average, that's an improvement versus righties on what they're getting.
Sure.
Yeah, and hopefully, like the other side of it is, should we jump to the Rodriguez of it all? Like, hopefully, Rodriguez is going to help bring something to this. Because
sure, we can talk about
Laureano wasn't bringing anything. He was supposed to be here for a degree of like defense and
hitting
lefties, but they got as I comment on Twitter. Listen, they got Cream Garcia again. Like I keep making this reference because it's when you buy into 6 to 8 weeks instead of buying into what a guy's done all year. And Laureano just hadn't been good all year. And then, they decide to look at the data of what he did and probably overvalue that, unfortunately. And now they're going to pay him $5 million to not play.
Yeah, I will say coming into the year, I was optimistic. They talked about some swing changes he made and some approach changes. And, I liked the idea of playing defense in the corners and spelling in center and in limited situations, a great throwing arm. The walk rate was good, and he's always hit lefties, and there's always a place for those guys. Now, you could argue whether or not paying him what you were paying him to do that was a little bit much. I mean, $5 million for a guy who's a lefty, supposed to be a lefty masher with defense might be a little rich because you can find a lot of those guys. Like, I don't know. I don't remember what they paid Ryan or even Brian Geyer, but it certainly wasn't $5 million. I don't think. But yeah, he had a 121 WRC plus against lefties last year. That's playable. That's more than playable. He was terrible against righties, and this year he was terrible against everybody. He did not bring anything to the plate, and defense and speed can only get you so far, as we've seen with Miles Straw. And you're right, they have committed some money to these guys, and they have decided to pay them and not be part of the winning roster. And the second decision, I'm glad they are just realizing their sunk costs at this point. But, what do we – I don't even know what the payroll is, and I don't want to get really into payroll talk, to be honest, because I know what will happen. But when you have a payroll like the Guardians do, committing $10 million a year to Straw and Laureano and someone's going to say Austin Hedges too, but I'm not really too concerned about that. But especially considering you have other options at catcher at this point, even though Bo Naylor's been a disappointment offensively. It's a lot of budget allocated to two outfielders that gave you absolutely nothing this year and who both are pretty much gone. So yeah, that's I was optimistic on Laureano. I was wrong. I hope I'm wrong about Johnathan Rodriguez though, because the numbers in the minors have been good. I've seen him all the way from Lake County to Columbus, and he used to be a switch hitter. He stopped switch hitting. He's always swung and missed a lot. I think he has issues with off-speed stuff, and I think good velocity is going to beat him because the swing can get very long. I'm going to be very interested to see the swing data on him whenever that becomes available when he makes his first appearance. But he could run into a home run. Like Laureano was giving you absolutely nothing. This could be, even if it's an F to a C, it's better than what it's been. But the walk rate, I know everyone's like, oh, he's chasing less, he's walking a ton. That's great. But Will Brennan walked in the minors, and other guys we've seen have walked in the minors, and it just doesn't translate. So it's hard to trust that stuff. My fear with Rodriguez is he's a little more passive this year, and he's also sacrificing some power to do that. He doesn't offer anything defensively except for a good arm. He's got no speed. I think you're just really hoping for this guy to run into some home runs every now and then against left-handers. I think that's essentially what his role is going to be, and maybe I'll be wrong and he'll be more than that, but that's kind of where I am on Rodriguez. I know everyone's going to say you're so negative, but I see a profile here that's it could be helpful. It could work out, but it's a very limited floor. The ceiling could be good, I guess, but the percentile outcomes here are not great.
It
can't be worse than Laureano, I will say. He can't be worse.
And here's the thing: he's going to be a pretty bad defender with a great arm.
Yes.
For everyone complaining about Florial and Gabby out there, he's worse. But I'm a little rosier on the offensive profile. The power is there. Yeah, he is probably too passive. And the one thing we know for sure is walk data. Walk data is valuable in showing a guy can walk, but there's no predictive value in it. Guys never walk as much. So the fact that he's leaning on that is less than ideal, but he has also just hit the ball really hard.
He does do that.
And you're kind of hoping, is there a world where he's kind of like Christopher Morel or Ryan Noda a year ago, potentially? Now, at the same time, we can also talk about Ryan Noda this year has not lived up to what we saw. It's always back in AAA, but that's the positive potential. Now, I'm not willing to say he's going to do that. I'm also, like I said, a little rosier than you. I think he's going to be a solid platoon bat. I do think that this guy can hit lefties. I do think.
I agree. I think
we've seen that, and I think he is an upgrade over Laureano. I think
not asking for much there.
No, and it's in a situation where Brennan Rodriguez platoon when everyone's healthy makes sense, especially because then you can defensive sub for Rodriguez late in the game. So I think there's a lot of value in that, and maybe he ends up being better than either of us think. The one thing you got to give him credit for is same thing I've talked about a few years ago with Eric Haas is this is a guy who was kind of on the outs of the organization. He was not talked about at all. Had been a high pick, got a lot of money. We talked about how he was a switch hitter. Now he's only righty, but it's those guys who put in the work to kind of to reinvent themselves. I am always going to root for those guys. That's a great thing with him. He put in the work. He could have just taken the money he made and moved on, or he could have just kept trying. A lot of guys keep doing what fails. You might think that that's not the right approach, but that happens so much. So for a guy who reinvented himself, I think there's a chance that I don't like to bet against guys like him, but he might be like Haas, where he's a backup with some really great years. Really good.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see if he is like an Oscar Gonzalez, where he ends up having a couple of good months and people buy in, and then the bottom falls out, like we thought with Rodriguez or with Gonzalez. And there is some of that profile here, but yeah, the throwing arm will be an asset, which will be good. Somebody will probably try to run on him, and it'll be a mistake because he's got a great arm, and that'll help out. And then you could put Brennan in for some more range defensively, and yeah, I think he can hit lefties. I'm curious to see if they will limit him to lefties early on and see if that helps this offense out. Like I said, it couldn't hurt. It can't be any worse than it was with Laureano. And at the very least, you're going to find out who Rodriguez is, so if he's part of the future or not. And that's still a big part of what's going on in 2024. And with all the winning going on, there's still questions to be answered in terms of who is part of the future here, which is exciting. They're winning and still having to do all those things. All right, we talked about Rodriguez. We're going to talk about Clase a little bit. We're going to talk about college tournaments. And I guess we'll touch on Lindor's return to Cleveland, which was really much ado about nothing. So look forward to all that.
First, let's talk about our friends over at PrizePicks. So I went over and I'm looking at PrizePicks. How about a hitter fantasy score of 7.5 for Jose Ramirez for tomorrow? I'd have to look at the matchups, but I don't know. I kind of like Jose right now with the way that he is
Adrian
playing.
Hauser's pitching. Not good.
Yeah. Hauser's been okay with the Brewers. We'll have to see. But I do kind of like that one.
Stink.
I mean, everything on the Mets kind of stinks this year. So I do like, I think I'd go more. 7.5 is a pretty good score, though. I talked about Christopher Morel against the Cubs. He's at a 6 point, or versus Atlanta, he's at 6.5. I'd be tempted to take less. High score tomorrow is Ohtani at an 8.5 versus Arizona. I kind of like to go with that guy and go less.
Okay.
You know, like looking at a high and not necessarily trusting that. You know, there's the Goblins and Monsters. All of these are currently popular. So go to PrizePicks yourself and make sure to check out for you. The nice thing about PrizePicks is, as I always say, it's pick more or pick less. It's just that easy. But remember to head to the website or download the app. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match of up to $100. That is code LOCKEDONMLB, all one word, all lowercase, for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy.
It is also easy to find the Guardians game on your SiriusXM app on Tuesday at 6:10 Eastern. What do we say? 2:10 Hawaiian?
It's Hawaiian is 5 hours.
5 hours. So 1:10.
Alaska is 4.
Alaska's 4. So if you're in Alaska and you want to listen to the Guardians game, search on your SiriusXM app at noon or 1 o'clock and just search Guardians. All fun. All right, you found good stats on where Clase is, and I feel like we haven't really talked about him a lot because he's just been so consistent. And for a guy who a year ago was really frustrating at times, I feel like, because he led the league in blown saves. There were so many close games, and weird things just tended to happen with him on the mound, like BABIP, and there were just other weird things happening. And this year, like his Savant page, all crazy amounts of red. And he's been more dominant this year than he has been any year with the Guardians. Honestly, if you look at a lot of the numbers, this is his best year as a Guardian. 2022 was pretty good. So he's pretty close to all those numbers, but I feel like we just haven't talked about him a lot. And he is quickly going to be the Guardians saves leader, it seems like. And at this point in the season, we'll see what happens with Josh Naylor. But, I know you're not a big fan of the All-Star game, but I'm thinking he might be the Guardians' lone All-Star right now.
Yeah. I mean, you could pick a lot of guys in that bullpen, right? Like, it's just going to come down to which guy, which is, of course, goes to Clase A because that's the closer. But, yeah, he tied Chris Perez, the great Chris Perez, the mailman, as he was known. Chris Perez, that was his name, right? Wasn't he the mailman? There was something about deliveries with him. Maybe it wasn't that. But it was for his dog, right? That's that. Never mind. But he's the guys ahead of him are truly some of the greats, though, in bullpen history. Doug Jones, I'm in my early 40s. Like Doug Jones had some peak years in Cleveland. I talk about a guy who reinvented himself, and it really fits into our previous segment. Is third. Second is Bob Wickman. I don't know if it's necessarily as much greats as like it was nice to see a guy with my build on the mound. Hey, might as well run with it. And then Cody Allen was done with baseball by the time he was 30 because of how he was used here. It's really unfortunate, but he is Clase is now 25 saves behind Cody Allen. So if he gets 26 more saves, he'll be the all-time saves leader in franchise history. Like for a guy who's only 26. I like to listen to the outside broadcast to hear what the rest of the country says about Cleveland. And outside of like being very insulting towards Cleveland when they talked about Cade Smith, how he got to go from, beautiful Canada to Hawaii to Cleveland. And tried to make a joke at the city's expense. So that was not so good. But they were really like talking about how it's amazing how many saves he has at such a young age. And just like, is his ERA under 1 again? or is it just close to being under 1? It's
it is currently 0.37.
Like enjoy it.
Like
0.37. When do we ever talk about a guy having a 0.37 ERA in May?
We haven't talked about it enough. That's what I'm saying.
It's like, he's unbelievable. Like by the end of this year, you can make he is on the all-time Guardians team, like the greatest team. Like if you're making an all-time Guardians team, he's the closer. I know that relief pitching has only been something around for a while, but like he is the all-time Guardians closer. Like end of story. Like enjoy him.
Yeah, enjoy him. He's going to be the all-time saves leader. I mean, this team should win at least 50 more games, hopefully more. And if he only needs 25 to get there, I'm sure they're going to need him to save more than half of those. So can't imagine him ending the year without the franchise record, which is insane to say, considering he's only been the closer here since 2021. And even in 2021, he wasn't the closer at the outset of the year. They still had 99 closing at some points in 2021. So they didn't pitch in 2020 because of COVID and steroids. But I forgot about that. I was at the game on Monday, and the whole return of Lindor was really kind of much ado about nothing. Like it was, there was no really visceral reaction either way. Like I heard some boos, I heard some cheers, but none of them was really like loud and overwhelming. Like it was just a very it's almost like he barely played here. Like it was a guy who maybe spent a few years here, and some people liked him and some didn't. And it was a very weird reaction, if I'm being honest. But I don't know. I think he'll be okay in the end. I know he's having a horrible season right now to this point. I think he's going to wind up being obviously better than a 195 hitter is what he is right now. But a good case that we don't have time to talk about today in terms of free agency and the risks there. And the trades worked out for both cities. Although the Guardians have won a little more without Lindor, which is odd, but that's more about the Guardians team building than it is Francisco Lindor, because they won a lot with Lindor here too for good reason. They had his best years, I will say. There was an announcement after the game from, I believe it was Signal Cleveland, said that the Guardians exercised their option to buy the Gateway East garage. So they are now going to own the parking garage that is directly behind Progressive Field. That seems like the pathway to Ballpark Village. We can get into that another day as well. But that is an interesting turn of events that seemed like that was coming, but it might be a few years before it all gets realized. We're hoping Stephen Kwan will go on a rehab assignment sometime next week, so he could be about 2 weeks away. That's good news. So by the beginning of June, he's back. That'd be good. And then Jeff, college tournaments start today as you're listening to this. Could be a fun time of year. A lot of scouts will be in attendance for these. And hey, if you play good in some of these tournaments and you play good in the College World Series and all those, have a chance to make a move. These guys are finally playing the best competition they're going to play all year for the most part. Some of them, anyway.
Yeah. I mean, it's a chance for some guys who have maybe missed some time, maybe a JJ Weatherholt to Gade, maybe even a Nick Kurtz, just those last few chances. For the guys who are more established, maybe not as much, but it's an important time there.
Yeah.
Just like it's an important time for all of you joining us each and every day here on the show. I want to give a shout out to my high school friend, Tom Willie, who I often see in the comments, who's an everydayer. And, my other high school buddy used to write for Waiting for Next Year, Andy Clayman, who always texts me after we say something interesting on the show. So thank you too for joining us, and thank you all for joining us. Remember to rate and review, download daily. It helps. Let's get those numbers back up 1,000 per show. We really love seeing that. Thank you all, and go Guardians.